In the summer of 2015, a crime occurred in the small town of Midland, Kansas, that deeply disturbed the local community. Crime was extremely rare in Midland, and any incidents that did take place were typically minor, such as petty theft, occasional vandalism, or an occasional bar fight. Serious offenses, particularly violent ones, were almost non-existent. However, on December 10th, 2015, Midland was shaken by a crime that completely disrupted the town's sense of security, leaving residents in disbelief. Marcus Williams, 45, had lived his entire life in Midland. Born and raised there, Marcus was the youngest of three children in a working-class family. His parents owned a small auto repair shop on the town's outskirts, which they operated for years before passing it down to Marcus when he became an adult. The Williams family had always been well regarded in Midland for their hard work and commitment to the community, a legacy Marcus proudly continued. From an early age, Marcus showed a natural talent for mechanics. After finishing high school, he chose not to pursue higher education, instead opting to work with his father in the family business. Over the years, Marcus became known as the go-to mechanic in Midland. He was not only skilled at his craft, but also a kind and reliable man who treated his customers with fairness and respect. Despite his quiet demeanor, those who knew Marcus appreciated his subtle humor and his willingness to lend a hand to others. In his personal life, Marcus was more of a solitary figure. He married young, but the marriage ended in divorce after a few years, with Marcus gaining custody of his son, now a teenager. Despite the divorce, Marcus maintained a friendly relationship with his ex-wife. His son was one of the few people with whom he shared a strong bond. Outside of work and his role as a father, Marcus spent most of his time working on projects in his garage or fishing at a nearby lake. Cassandra Fudge, 48, at the time of the incident, was also a Midland native. She grew up in a middle-class family and was the oldest of two children. Cassandra was known for her intelligence and drive, excelling as a student. After graduating from high school, she left Midland to attend college in a nearby city where she earned a degree in education. It was during her time at college that she met James Fudge, who would later become her husband. After their marriage, Cassandra and James returned to Midland, where Cassandra began her career as an elementary school teacher. She quickly gained a reputation as a devoted and compassionate educator, admired by both her students and colleagues. Cassandra had a special ability to connect with children, motivating them to do their best. Her passion for teaching was evident in all her efforts, and she took great pride in her work. In her personal life, Cassandra was seen as the ideal wife and partner to James. They had been married for nearly 20 years and were considered a picture-perfect couple in the community. However, beneath the surface, Cassandra struggled with feelings of dissatisfaction and unfulfillment in her marriage. Despite outwardly having a successful life, she often found herself reminiscing about her youth and the dreams she once had. These feelings were intensified by the monotony of small-town life and the pressure to maintain the appearance of a happy, successful couple. James Fudge, 49, was a well-respected figure in Midland. Like Marcus and Cassandra, James had deep roots in the town. He came from a large family and was the eldest of 5 children. From an early age, James was known for his strong work ethic and sense of responsibility, traits that served him well as he grew older and started building his life in Midland. After high school, James entered the construction industry, initially working as a laborer on various projects throughout the region. However, his ambition and leadership skills led him to start his own construction company. Over time, his business grew, and James became known as one of the most dependable contractors in the area. His company handled both residential and commercial projects, and his reputation for high-quality work and fair business practices earned him respect from both clients and competitors. In his personal life, James was seen as a pillar of the community, deeply involved in local affairs. He participated in town meetings, supported local charities, and served on various committees. His marriage to Cassandra was viewed as a partnership of equals, with both being prominent figures in town. To outsiders, the Fudge household seemed like the epitome of stability and success. However, as with many relationships, there were underlying tensions that were not visible to the public eye. James held strong principles, especially when it came to family and loyalty. He valued trust and honesty above all else and expected the same from those closest to him. When he began to suspect that something was amiss in his marriage, these values were put to the test. His growing suspicions about Cassandra's infidelity consumed him, and the thought of being betrayed by both his wife and his cousin became unbearable. As his doubts grew, so did his anger, setting the stage for the tragic events that would follow. Marcus Williams, Cassandra Fudge, and James Fudge were all shaped by their shared environment in Midland, a small town where everyone knew each other, and appearances often concealed deeper, more complicated realities. Marcus and Cassandra had known each other since childhood. Their past affection and shared history left a lasting impact on both of them. Although their lives took different paths after high school, their feelings for each other never completely faded. They first met in high school and became inseparable during their teenage years, creating countless memories together. Although their relationship was never formalized, it was marked by a strong emotional bond and a mutual understanding that went beyond their youthful romance. When Cassandra left Midland for college, the distance strained their relationship, and they eventually parted ways. Marcus remained in Midland, working in his family's auto repair shop, while Cassandra pursued her education and later married James Fudge. By the summer of 2014, both Marcus and Cassandra had gone through significant life changes. Marcus had divorced and was raising his teenage son as a single father, while Cassandra had built a successful career as a teacher. Although her marriage to James had begun to show signs of strain, both of them found themselves reflecting on their past and the choices they had made. For Cassandra, the possibility of reconnecting with Marcus was both thrilling and unsettling. She felt a mix of nostalgia and guilt, knowing that her current life and marriage were far from perfect. The opportunity to rekindle their relationship came unexpectedly when Marcus and Cassandra ran into each other at the Midland Summer Festival, an annual event that brought together people from all walks of life. The festival, which featured local vendors, food stalls, and live music, was a highlight of Midland's community life. For Marcus and Cassandra, it provided a chance to catch up and reconnect with the familiar comfort of their past. Their initial conversation was warm and genuine as they reminisced about their high school days and discussed the paths their lives had taken since then. Both were struck by how easily their old bond had been rekindled. The connection they once shared seemed as strong as ever, and the familiarity of their conversation offered a comforting escape from the complexities of their present lives. In the weeks that followed, Marcus and Cassandra met regularly, initially under the guise of casual catch-ups and friendly talks. They arranged to meet for coffee or lunch at local cafes, places where they could converse privately. Without drawing attention, these meetings became more frequent and increasingly intimate. They began discussing their personal feelings about their lives and relationships, finding comfort in each other's company. Cassandra confided in Marcus about her dissatisfaction with her marriage, describing how James, though a good and dedicated husband, had grown distant and absorbed in his work. She felt that the passion and connection that once defined their relationship had faded over time. Her feelings of unfulfillment were made worse by the repetitive and predictable nature of her daily routine. She missed the excitement and intensity of her youth, and Marcus represented a link to that more vibrant and fulfilling period. In turn, Marcus shared his own struggles. He spoke about his divorce and the challenges of raising his son as a single father. The weight of his responsibilities and the loneliness following the end of his marriage left him feeling isolated. The renewed connection with Cassandra gave him a sense of comfort and companionship that he had been lacking. He found her presence to be emotionally supportive and a welcome distraction from his daily challenges. As their meetings continued, the emotional intimacy they shared began to shift toward physical attraction. The line between friendship and romance gradually blurred. Both Marcus and Cassandra were fully aware of the risks involved in pursuing a relationship beyond friendship. They understood the potential consequences for their personal lives and the effects it could have on their families. The affair between Marcus and Cassandra was a mix of passion and guilt. They were deeply committed to each other, but also acutely aware of the ethical and emotional consequences of their actions. Their relationship offered them an escape from their respective disappointments, but also carried a heavy burden of secrecy and the risk of being discovered. As the affair deepened, both Marcus and Cassandra had to face their feelings and responsibilities. They were torn between their desire for each other and the realities of their existing relationships. The more involved they became, the harder it was to maintain the facade of normalcy in their daily lives. By the fall of 2015, James Fudge's suspicions regarding Cassandra's behavior had grown stronger. Initially, he noticed subtle changes, such as Cassandra's increasing absences from home and her avoidance of direct answers about her whereabouts. She often claimed to stay late at work or attend extra meetings, but these explanations started to seem insufficient as James observed her growing detachment and erratic behavior. James's concerns turned into suspicion when he saw Cassandra and Marcus together at local spots around Midland. Their meetings, which seemed casual at first, became more concerning as James noticed a clear pattern. Despite his initial hesitation to confront the situation, the mounting evidence forced him to face the uncomfortable reality. The turning point came when James found a recent restaurant receipt linking Cassandra and Marcus. The date on the receipt coincided with one of Cassandra's claimed late nights at work. This discovery was the final confirmation James needed to validate his suspicions, prompting him to confront Marcus directly for clarity and resolution. On December 5, 2015, James visited Marcus's auto repair shop without warning. Marcus was working on a car when James entered, his face a mix of anger and determination. Without delay, James addressed the issue head-on. "Marcus, I know about you and Cassandra. We need to talk." Taken aback, Marcus tried to remain composed, though his anxiety was apparent. "James, I don't know what you're talking about," he replied. "Cassandra and I are just reconnecting as friends." James's frustration boiled over. "I've seen the receipts, the messages. I want to hear it from you. What's really going on?" Marcus tried to defuse the situation, explaining that their relationship was strictly platonic and that they had merely reconnected. "I assure you it's not what you think. We've just been friends, but there's nothing more." Despite Marcus's reassurances, James remained unconvinced, his anger and sense of betrayal palpable. "You think you can just brush this off? You've been seeing her behind my back. How am I supposed to believe there's nothing serious going on?" The confrontation was heated and emotional. James wasn't calmed by Marcus's attempts to explain, and the argument ended with James storming out, still deeply upset. James began to closely monitor Cassandra, following her on multiple occasions to observe her movements. His surveillance revealed more than he had expected. On one occasion, he saw Cassandra and Marcus together at a secluded park, their body language suggesting a level of intimacy that went beyond friendship. This sight, along with other evidence James had gathered, confirmed his suspicions of an ongoing affair. James also discovered items and gifts in their home that matched the times Cassandra had claimed to be working late. Each new discovery deepened his sense of betrayal and injustice. His emotional turmoil intensified as he realized the extent of the deception. James was overwhelmed by a deep sense of anger and betrayal, not only towards Cassandra, but also Marcus, his cousin. The confrontation with Marcus had failed to resolve anything, and the additional proof of Cassandra's infidelity only intensified his rage. The affair between Marcus and Cassandra had not only torn apart their personal lives, but had also created a significant rift between James and Marcus, who had once been family. What followed was the inevitable result of built-up emotions, unresolved grievances, and a volatile mix of anger and betrayal. James's mounting frustration pushed him to the brink. For weeks, he had been following Cassandra and Marcus, gathering evidence and confronting them in various ways. The encounter with Marcus at the auto repair shop had only heightened his anger. James's trust in his wife and cousin had shattered, and a sense of injustice clouded his reasoning. On the night of December 10th, after a day spent stewing over the situation, he made the fateful decision to confront Marcus once more. This time, the encounter was not going to be a discussion or negotiation, but rather a confrontation charged with the potential for violence. Driven by a mix of rage and desperation, James felt his sense of betrayal demanded retribution. Meanwhile, Marcus was spending a quiet evening alone at home, working on personal projects and unwinding after his day. He had no idea trouble was coming and was unaware of the danger that loomed. James, growing more agitated, made his way to Marcus's house, armed with a recently purchased handgun. His determination to make his presence known was palpable. At around 7:30 p.m., James arrived at Marcus's home, parked his car a short distance away, and cautiously approached the house. The atmosphere felt tense, with his footsteps echoing through the still neighborhood. When he reached the front door, he knocked forcefully, the sound echoing with his mounting anger. Marcus, surprised to see James, greeted him coldly. Before Marcus could respond or inquire about the visit, James pushed past him and entered the house. Taken aback, Marcus tried to de-escalate the situation, but it quickly intensified. Without hesitation, James drew the handgun he had brought with him and pointed it at Marcus, instantly filling the room with fear. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Marcus attempted to reason with James. "James, put the gun down. Let's talk about this," he pleaded, his voice shaking. But James, overwhelmed by anger, refused to be reasoned with. "You think you can just take everything from me? Cassandra? My life? Everything?" James's voice was filled with raw emotion as he struggled to control his fury. Marcus tried to move away, but James's rage was too intense. Their argument escalated into a shouting match, with James accusing Marcus of ruining his life and betraying him. The confrontation grew chaotic, with both men shouting over each other. In the heat of the moment, James's grip on the gun tightened, and without warning, he fired. The shot rang out, echoing through the house. Marcus collapsed to the floor, struck by the bullet. The violence of the act left James in shock, his anger quickly replaced by regret and horror. His impulsive decision, driven by a moment of intense rage, had led to devastating consequences. Marcus lay critically wounded on the floor, and James, still holding the handgun, was paralyzed by the weight of his actions. The immediate aftermath was filled with disbelief and panic. James knew he had crossed a line from which there was no return. His pursuit of justice had led to a violent and irreversible outcome. In the minutes following the shooting, James called 911, reporting the incident with urgency and distress. Emergency responders arrived swiftly, but it was too late for Marcus. He was pronounced dead at the scene, and the police began their investigation into the shooting. James was taken into custody, and the investigation into Marcus's death quickly began. The small town of Midland was left reeling from the shock of the tragedy. The murder of Marcus Williams on December 10, 2015, sent shockwaves through the close-knit community, which was now grappling with the aftermath of such a violent and highly publicized crime. The police launched a meticulous investigation to uncover all the details surrounding Marcus's death. The Midland Police Department responded immediately to the scene and found Marcus critically injured. Despite efforts by medical personnel, Marcus was declared dead upon arrival. The investigation focused on several critical aspects of the case. James Fudge, who had called 911 to report the shooting, was cooperative with the authorities, giving them an account of the events that led up to the confrontation. He admitted to bringing a handgun and explained that the shooting occurred during a heated argument. A thorough forensic examination of Marcus's home was conducted, with evidence being collected, including the handgun used in the shooting, spent shell casings, and other physical traces from the scene. This evidence was vital in reconstructing the sequence of events. Forensic analysis confirmed that Marcus had been shot at close range, supporting James's account of the argument escalating into violence. Witness statements from neighbors also played an essential role. Several neighbors reported hearing loud voices and a gunshot on the evening of December 10th. Their accounts helped confirm the timeline and context of the confrontation. The investigation also involved interviews with Cassandra Fudge, who was profoundly affected by Marcus's death. She provided critical testimony about her relationship with Marcus and the nature of her interactions with James leading up to the shooting. Though her involvement in the affair added complexity to the case, her statements were pivotal in understanding the emotional dynamics at play. James Fudge was charged with second-degree murder, and his trial began in the summer of 2016. The legal proceedings attracted significant attention from the local community, given the high-profile nature of the case and the personal connections involved. The trial aimed to determine whether James's actions constituted criminal behavior, and if so, what the appropriate legal consequences should be. The prosecution argued that James's actions were premeditated and driven by a calculated desire to confront Marcus. They presented evidence showing that James had planned the confrontation, including his decision to bring a handgun. The prosecution also emphasized the emotional turmoil James had experienced, but contended that it did not justify using deadly force, arguing that the shooting was an act of revenge rather than a spur-of-the-moment reaction. James's defense team, led by attorney Laura Adams, argued that James acted out of intense emotional distress. They contended that the confrontation with Marcus was fueled by his feelings of betrayal and frustration, though they stressed that James had not intended to kill Marcus. The defense presented evidence of James's mental state and the emotional toll the affair had taken on him, arguing that the shooting was a tragic outcome of a highly charged emotional situation rather than a premeditated act of murder. Throughout the trial, emotional testimony from both sides painted a complicated picture of the relationships involved. Cassandra testified about her affair with Marcus and the strain it had placed on her marriage, adding a personal layer to the case and highlighting the deep emotional conflicts leading to the confrontation. After deliberating for several days, the jury reached a verdict on August 5, 2016, finding James Fudge guilty of second-degree murder. The jury determined that while James's actions were not premeditated, they were the result of reckless disregard for human life. James was sentenced to 20 years in prison, a decision that reflected the severity of his crime while acknowledging the emotional turmoil he had experienced. The trial concluded, providing a sense of closure for the community, though the impact of Marcus's death continued to resonate. The case served as a powerful reminder of the devastating consequences that can result from personal conflicts and emotional upheaval. Midland, a small town once defined by its tight-knit community, was left to cope with the aftermath of the tragedy, processing the loss of one of their own and the repercussions of a violent act that had forever altered their lives.